This episode of the Edify Studios podcast is brought to you by Americlad Quality Metal Crafts. Quality Metal Crafts has distinguished themselves as a premier metal fabricator for the architectural construction and industrial markets. From day one, their commitment has been simple: produce the highest quality products at the best possible value with exceptional client service. Attention to detail, superior quality, innovation. That's what makes the Americlad product line the first choice for your construction requirements. To learn more, visit americlad.com.
Welcome to the Edify Studios podcast, discussing the shift of architectural concepts into actual solutions, disrupting the current status quo, and having a blast the whole time. Here are your hosts, Brad Glauser and Brad Walker.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Edify Studios podcast.
Welcome.
We are here at AIA 2019, Vegas
Las
baby.
Vegas.
So we are having a little bit of a special episode today. We are recording live from the exhibition floor.
We're in the belly of the friggin' beast.
I know, this is wonderful. And
Awesome.
we're bringing along Michael Riscica with Young Architect. How are you today, man?
I'm really good. I'm super excited to chat with you guys.
Yeah, we are too, man.
Sincerely welcome.
Yeah.
This is a huge deal for us.
This is a big deal.
You were technically our first guest.
You are.
I good.
You are.
So we started at the top, and we're here.
We are here. Yeah, that's
Doesn't get any better than this.
It doesn't get any better than this. Go ahead.
So, no, we wanted to just take a little time. What we typically do is just do check-ins, and we want to make sure everybody is how they're doing, how are things going.
Yeah.
I'll ask you, Walker, how you been, man?
Check in. The kids just finished up flag football, so
Oh,
that
good.
just ended up.
Nice.
They both went to finals, and then they got just destroyed.
Did they?
I mean, they showed up with just like feeling all good, and they just literally got wiped up. But they had a blast. It was a good season. They had an incredible amount of time. Great parents, which always make it very enjoyable. And just the weather's been nice. I've been
Awesome.
putting a new deck on the house, which I needed for since I moved in.
Yeah, right.
12 years ago. Dilapidated garbage time, but that's been pretty much me. What about you?
You know, we just finished. So spring baseball just got done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Mike, I've got a couple of kids, and both in baseball and softball. My girl is 11. She's in softball. Just barely got done with that, and then spring baseball finished up about a week after that for my oldest son. And we were thinking about diving into like that extended all-star break or all-star season, but you know how it is like in the month of June in the Northwest where you kind of want to just like start being outside more with the family, not necessarily have like a huge obligations.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff that we do in the architectural and construction world starts to happen, right? So
You don't want to be mandated to be at this one park for
Yeah.
this 7-hour part of
I
the
mean,
most beautiful part
it literally
of
has,
the summer.
I mean, baseball and softball is, for me, for our family, has been kind of like our second job. We've probably been spending about 4 to 6 hours a day every single week just doing it with the kids.
Yeah. that's
So it's been fun to keep them active and keep them going. They start in February and it kind of just runs through June, and man, just a good time. So other than that, man, everything's been going great. And just getting back into the summer. I can't wait to just spend some good time in the Northwest.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's going to be a good one.
Speaking of the Northwest, you've been there
Oh yeah, I love the
for
Northwest.
a bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
Why don't you jump into what's been cool lately, and then we'll go even further back.
Okay, so I've been traveling a lot, nonstop this year. I've been on the road constantly.
Yes, you have.
And I've just been going all over America. And I'm just getting ready to. I'm still kind of in the middle of all my tours. I'm pretty much
Okay.
going to be nonstop traveling till the end of the year.
Favorite place to date?
Date?
Where's your favorite place you've been on
I think maybe,
so
like,
far?
Going on a date with a
Yeah, you
girl.
wanna-
or
would you-
something. Yeah.
Will you go out with me?
Your favorite date
It's
so
like
far.
I'm
Your
dating
favorite
girls
date.
in all these cities.
Exactly.
That'd be cool.
In different area codes.
Yeah. You know where? Okay, so this is how a lot of people ask me this question. They say, "Where's the most exciting place?" And
Sure.
I do a lot of presentations. I think it's the places that I am most well received and where's the
Yeah.
largest community. And it's, to be honest with you, it's been El Paso, Texas.
Ooh.
That's awesome.
Dallas, Texas was really
Okay.
great. Birmingham, Alabama. Memphis has always been really nice to me.
That's a place I got on the list. I've never been to Memphis.
I spoke in Baltimore a couple like last week. And
Baltimore's pretty great.
Yeah, they've been.
Baltimore's pretty great.
It's been fun. So there's a lot of others that I can't think off the top of my head, but it's been generally speaking, it's been a lot of fun. I love America. I'm addicted to
It's great.
seeing what's going on all over the country.
So you do a lot on Instagram, my man. And why don't you actually just give everybody kind of your Instagram handle and tell a little bit how to follow you, where to get a hold of you, and stuff like that.
So Instagram, it's my handle's Young Architects PDX. And I gotta spell it because it's not straightforward. It's Young YOUGN Architects ARCHITX PDX.
Ooh,
got it.
Yeah.
That's a little bit racy. I like it, actually.
Yeah.
It's very youthful.
No,
very
good.
young.
It's good.
It's very good. Let's jump way back in the Wayback Machine. Why don't you take us back to New York, where it all started?
Yeah. So I grew up in New York, suburbs. That means Connecticut, Long Island, New Jersey. I went to high school in New Jersey.
Okay.
I was born in New York City, Queens. And I was a terrible student in school.
Beautiful.
I was awful.
Same here.
Academics.
You got 3 horrible ones.
Struggled.
This is not going to be a great interview because all 3 of us are in the same boat.
Yeah, I hated school as a kid.
Yeah.
I was miserable. I was a special ed student. I couldn't pass a
Me too.
standardized test in reading and writing, which is ironic because now I write about a standardized test for architects.
Well, but not to go on a different road for 30 seconds, but I think and I believe that there's a strong difference between school and education, and there's a big difference between school and somebody's ability to learn.
Yeah, I agree.
Because school did not treat me very well because I did not treat it very well. But at the same time, I am hungry to learn so much.
Yeah.
It just, that was not an application. That was not an environment I was going to be rich inside of.
I agree.
So it sounds like you were kind of in the same
Same
boat.
thing. I graduated high school and had no plans ever going to college. I was working in restaurants making decent money, working $100 a night, whatever.
Sure.
And when I was 21 years old, I landed a job with an interior design company doing kitchen cabinets they did kitchen remodels. And they said, Mike, if you could learn how to use AutoCAD and draw these cabinet boxes for us, we'll give you this job as a draftsperson. So I taught myself how to use AutoCAD with a book. And I realized that I love to draw. I love to draw and think 3-dimensionally, which led me to start studying architectural drafting, which led me to discovering architecture and design, which led me, I went to architecture school in the Boston Architecture Center for 2 years. And then I moved back to New York and I finished my 5-year bachelor's degree at the New York Institute of Technology.
Unbelievable.
But it was, and architecture school was the first time I ever thrived academically because I realized in my formal, K through 12, I had all these skills that had never been tapped into.
Right.
It had never been tapped into until I got to architecture school, and then it just took off like a rocket, and I never looked back.
Incredible.
That's incredible. Like, so you took. So how I want to talk about like age here because I had a very, very similar experience. Like, what age were you when you actually got the cabinet? You said 20 years old.
I was 21 years old when I saw drafting as I could make a living doing this, and it probably wasn't until I was 23, 24 I said, holy crap,
no,
I'm gonna
God,
holy
let it go.
shit, I can become an architect.
Whoa,
I could do.
You
this.
are the young guy.
and I just got
with your saucy mouth.
And so it was probably like 24, 25.
That's interesting because that's when learning for me, or the education piece that Walker talks about, turned on for myself.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't ready to learn until then.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
I just wasn't going to be in a place mentally, whether I was doing it to myself and bucking that, I wasn't ready to learn until I was 22.
Yeah. No, I think that it was very, very similar to me. So was it more of this, I'm interested in this, how you got invited to be like, hey, let's do this AutoCAD experience. Was it like that traditional yellow book, AutoCAD for Dummies? You dived into it and then said, okay, I can draw cabinets now. I like this thinking.
Yeah, my mom helped me get the job. She kind of worked for an offshoot of that company and doing internet marketing or something like that. And she helped me get kind of land that position. And I've always been good around computers. That was another thing. My mom's a computer programmer, and I had been on the internet since I was 12 years old. And
that helps.
Yeah, and I've always been really good with computers. And I was like, I don't know. I started messing around, and I was like, I could do this. This is
works.
fun.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So took you to Boston.
Okay, yeah. So Boston Architecture's got a great program. It's a work study program. I wasn't quite, I
like that.
My parents
I like that idea.
didn't want me to go into some fancy architecture program. They never thought I could do the work. They didn't want to pay all this money, and it was
a work study program. That's super smart.
So I worked 40 hours a week, and I went to school at night, and I hated it. I hated it. I hated the work stuff.
But you thrive. You hated the work or the education?
The work. I loved going to school at night, but the work was really tough during the day. I worked for a big firm. I was a part of the architecture machine. I was at the bottom of the totem pole, and they worked me really hard, and all I wanted to do was study architecture. And so I did that for 2 years, and I burned myself out. And I said, I want to go to school full time. I can do this. And so I put myself through architecture school.
Good for you, man.
And I spent $80,000 in student debt making it happen. So, and it was worth it. It was one of the best decisions I ever made.
No, that's pretty impressive. I think from a discussion standpoint, the reason why I talk about age is because I think there's such a revitalization of when, like, I learned and I wanted to learn around the same time, and that's when I actually saw that the linear path of education that took me through reading and writing, or through books or something like do a study program and then you learn something and then you get quizzed on it. That path didn't work for me, but my mind thinks very three-dimensionally. So as I got introduced to construction, I got introduced to products. I came into this world through a similar experience with the construction world anyway, via a general contractor and then via a residential contractor, where then I learned a lot about purchasing, a lot about the design aspect, and a lot about the budget side of it. But there was so much to learn in the product category for it, and I kind of migrated that direction for it. And now to be kind of like in this manufacturer world and think in a product format three-dimensionally of how these transitions go to buildings and go into applications for facades and envelopes just really feeds the beast, I think, inside my brain. And I don't think that it's such a similar path, man. I really appreciate it, actually. I can totally identify with it. So
that's great.
But no, I mean, so now talk about a little bit of origin story beyond that.
Yeah.
And then how it took you to Portland, what you did there, and then how you discovered kind of where you're at now, man. I'd love to hear that origin story a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was in architecture school, I was living in Boston. Okay. I've always been a big cyclist, riding bikes.
Okay.
I did a short bike ride from Boston to New York City.
Just a little guy.
Just a short one.
Yep.
And while I was researching that bike ride,
holy mackerel,
I discovered there's these people cycling across America, coast to coast, and they're writing about it on the internet. And I obsessed about that for years and years. And when I was in my fourth year of architecture school, the student school was that me and my bike took a bus down from New York down to Virginia Beach, and I did a bike ride from Virginia all the way out to Costa, Oregon.
Oh my God!
It was like 80 days.
Is that even legal?
Oh yeah, it was an 80 days.
I mean, that just seems like cruelty.
What? No, it was amazing, man.
But talk about seeing everything.
Yeah, it was
like from a vantage point that you just can't understand unless you've done something like that.
80 days.
But to be immersed into it, not just like, oh, I drove through Virginia once, or I was in the Wyoming sector for 18 minutes. To be there in the most legitimate and almost intimate way. Wow.
It was amazing.
That's got to be a life changer.
It was the first time I got outside my little New York City, Boston bubble I lived in my whole life, and I met amazing people everywhere across the way. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen the middle of America. I'd never seen the Rocky Mountains or the Pacific Ocean. And by the time, it just changed my life, seeing America on a bicycle. And I was in my fourth year architecture school. I wrapped up that trip. I flew back to New York. I started working on my thesis project. And
Which was?
I did a building in Venice, Italy.
Okay.
Yeah. And my best friend came to me and he said, hey, man, you want to ride cross country again after school's over? So I said, sure, why not? And so I did a second ride from Bar Harbor, Maine, all the way out to Anacortes, Washington.
No way.
And then I rode from came down to Seattle, and I rode down to Portland. And I stayed in Portland after that trip was over for 10 years.
Because you were so tired.
Yeah.
You couldn't go anywhere else. You're like, oh, I'm just here.
So Portland's that
This is the space I'm in now.
Yeah, Portland was the vortex.
Yeah.
So you did a lower half and then almost an upper half.
I did a middle half, and then I did the upper. And then in 2016, I did the middle trail again. I rode the trail I rode in 2005. I've ridden cross country 3 times, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you talking about it.
That is so impressive.
I think I saw some conversations back and forth on Instagram that you were saying, yeah, I've done it 3 times. I thought it was twice though, but now it reminds me.
You say he's making up the third one?
No, and apparently he did upper, lower, and middle. I get it, man.
So the first one though, solo, right?
Solo, all by myself.
Completely solo.
Yeah.
Second time and third time, I'm assuming.
Second time, I actually rode with my 2 best friends. Oh, solo. We just we put all the gear on our bikes and we just ride.
Yeah.
There's no support.
No support,
Wow.
but you're also not by yourself.
Never. And that's
so
the
that's
thing.
got to be a different experience even
Yeah.
then.
That's the thing. I've done a little bit of backpacking and hiking, and you're out in the woods by yourself. But on a bike trip, all day long, you're with people. Every time I stop at a gas station to fill up my water bottles, I'm talking to this person or that person. And then I'm seeing there's a lot of other cyclists. That trail that I rode in 2005 and in 2016 is the most famous cross-country bike trail. So I would show up to go camp in a park somewhere, and there'd be 2 or 3 other cyclists who are traveling the opposite direction, and we'd compare notes and chat. And in some ways, it's like a traveling party across the country. And with social media, I was posted on social media in 2016 the whole time, and I was meeting people who were following me, and like I'd cross, they'd be like, "Oh my God, Mike, we were waiting to see you." And
No way, that's rad.
So,
fun.
dude, I've always been fascinated by that and just the endurance aspect, mentally, physically, all of it. But I've paid attention to the ones that go from the Canada border to the Mexico border, down the whole trail there, and that's grueling on its own in a different level, maybe, but that's like sissy stuff compared to what you're talking about. Distance wise, and then I have to believe that when you're out in the middle of America, there are places where they typically don't see a cyclist as often, right?
Yeah.
So they had to have been just enamored, like, with why is this guy here on a bike?
Yeah. Well, there's a company.
How are you at this truck stop right now?
Well, there's a company that sells bicycle maps that go all over the country. And so they put us on all these beautiful back roads, the best roads to be on, all these rolling hills, just
safe.
Yeah, super safe, good bike friendly roads. But then there's a lot of times where there was I ended up going through Tennessee, and I got off the bike trails, and I just kind of made my own route and as I go. But I feel like I've done so much cycling that I've been really good at kind of hacking my way through and not always being, so safe with figuring out all the logistics and all that. I kind of just go.
That's interesting, man.
Huge dynamic, life changer.
And then you ran into Portland. Did you continue? Did you continue architecture in Portland?
Yeah, so I got to Portland in the summer of 2007.
Okay.
Bad time to start an architecture career.
Not the best market
Yeah.
to start in terms of just like financial parts and everything that was kind of
that's
actually when we started in this market in this industry, really.
That's right about when we started too.
With our truth, like our big moments of getting into it. Tough.
So this one happened was I landed a job with a small firm who had just signed big contracts with the city of Portland, Oregon, and the Portland State University. So they had projects.
Nice.
They landed 2 big projects, and they signed all the contracts right before the recession happened. And it was all public work, and the money was set aside. So I was able to actually stay employed through the worst of the recession while no other architects in Portland were working. I stayed employed through the worst of it, and it was around 2010, 2011. The work started to dry up. And
because the residual of the public work just kind of ended.
Yeah, those projects we ran out, and there was nothing else coming into the office. So I was starting to be underemployed. I was collecting unemployment. And then the city of Portland, Oregon reached out to me and said, "Hey, Mike, you've been working on this building with us for a year and a half, 2 years. We just got our bids back. We're getting ready to build it. We need help. And we need someone that understands this project to help us get this project built." So my company was like, go take this job.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I ended up taking a job as a capital improvements project manager for the city of Portland, Oregon. And
wow,
I ended up staying with the city for 5 years. And my role kind of shifted from rather than making money on architecture and construction, I was now spending money on architecture and construction. I was hiring architects, engineers, and contractors. And I was now the client, and I was now making the big decisions and seeing all of this work get built. And even though I wasn't playing the role of the architect, I almost felt more like an architect because I was a decision maker and I didn't have to draw every single line.
More true control.
Yes, it was a lot of fun.
That's a huge piece that is missing from a lot of opportunities. But what a great vantage point to see the industry from, just understanding what it is, and then to be able to step away yet still be 100% immersed in it. What a great learning opportunity just to drink in all of that side of the building.
I loved it. I really absorbed project management because
it's a unique soul to absorb that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, like and
it's something not enough focus is put in on.
Yeah,
because the project management really is the reality of the job, and that's where it falls down so many times. So kudos to you for understanding early that was a vital piece of this whole industry.
Huge.
Yeah. It's not just drawings and specs too. For me as the client, as the owner, there was the drawings and specs were one side of things, but there was a lot of there's a lot of buy-in from the stakeholders.
Yeah.
I was the project. The client was the city of Portland, Oregon. I ended up doing a lot of work for the Portland Police.
Oh, wow.
And so we renovated every police station and we built them a new building. And it was it's making sure that all these different parties were on board. And I spent a lot of time making sure that the end user understood the value of what we are delivering to them. When they see all these people coming in and doing all this work, they freak out. And so there was a lot of hand-holding with the clients and being the middleman between the architect and the contractors with the end user and the clients, and making sure that the communication was appropriate.
I'm curious, from like a kid that grew up in the Northeast to go into Portland, and now like deal with the people that have. I'm assuming a lot of the city employees and a lot of the policemen were born and raised there in Portland as well. And then was that a different culture based upon how you communicated? I mean, from just being from the Northwest or Northeast to the Northwest, or was there any issues there?
Yeah, when I first moved to Portland, I had a really hard time socially. It's a different dynamic. It
is an inverse dynamic.
I'm very New York. And it took me a while to get up to speed with how social dynamics work in the Northwest.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But after being there for a while, I figured it out.
Okay.
And then I started to realize too, my very direct approach sometimes works sparingly when I need it to.
Sparingly.
And I think that helped me as a project manager, is when I need to be direct and just say what no one else will say. It helped me.
Having the ability to use
awesome.
that, but also sheath it when you need is massively
Sheath
important.
it most of the time.
Well, and you have to be like, make a move, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you have to give it a little
it's wildly
show.
important, because you're right. The Pacific Northwest, in contrast to almost everywhere that I've been, is wildly passive aggressive, wildly timid, and very much like they want to skirt around everything. Versus, Michael, that was dumb. That was a dumb idea,
Yeah.
and I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't do that again, right?
Right.
Like, I've been in meetings with super East Coast architects who've said that to me, and in the moment you're like, okay, because and then it's done, it's over, right? It's all through. Other architects in the Pacific Northwest, not so much.
Yeah.
Well,
you get the skirt around kind of, I just don't. I'll think about it and I'll send you an email.
No, and for us, like,
Cool.
we were
Thanks.
last week. I think we were in an architect's appointment, and we were going through a historical retrofit on about 3 different projects that were 3 different buildings that were all supposed to come together in one development. And the head architect, so he's the principal of the firm.
Oh, yeah.
He leans over to us. He's like, "So Edify Studios. So what do you guys do, or how can you guys help us get where we need to? Like, tell us about it." And so Walker speaks up immediately.
I go, look, we typically walk into architects' offices and pee on their hopes and dreams and tell them what won't work. And sometimes they enjoy it, and oftentimes they maybe do or maybe don't. We don't ever know, actually. But we just try to cut to the chase of, that's not constructible.
Yeah.
Or it is constructible, but that's going to be all your money.
Yeah.
Here's another way. So for us, it's walking in and just saying, hey, here's all the bad stuff to a certain degree, right? Like, maybe you know all of it, but that's what I'm going to point to first. Cool. And then you can go and pick the sacred cow from this, and it's got to have that. But that's a lot of times what we do. And some architects know exactly how to take that, and some don't want to live in that world at all.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
No, so working for the city, getting into that, doing the capital improvements, project manager, but coming from this perspective of architecture and construction is pretty unique. So then, how was it kind of tailing off on that and then getting into young architect? I'm assuming that's the transition point?
Yeah. So what happened for me, it kind of started through the licensing.
Okay.
I worked in architecture offices, a variety of architecture offices, as I was a student, and I probably graduated with about 3 or 4 years experience. And I moved to Portland, and I got a job with the firm. And I'll be honest with you, 3 or 4 years experience, like, I knew a lot, but there was so much more I didn't know.
Okay.
And I wanted to go to graduate school so bad. I wanted to just study architecture forever. And I had so much student debt, and it was one of my professors said to me, he said, "Hey man, you don't need any more architecture education." He's like, you've gotten enough design education. Why don't you get your license and learn how to make money with architecture rather than just keep paying these institutions? And I said,
it's pretty smart.
It's wildly valuable advice that often isn't allocated to people.
By a professor.
Yeah, by someone I really trusted and respected. And I said, that's okay. So I started studying for the architect exam, and I kind of treated it like my poor man's graduate school. And through studying for the architect exam, I really started to learn about how the business of architecture works and all the different roles. And I had always been in love with design. Design. It's always about the design. I'm the designer. I'm going to be a star architect. And it was through starting to study for the architect exam and really learning the practice of architecture and the craft of it. I some way shifted my focus. The design stuff was cool, but I started to fall in love with the practice and the craft and the art of executing buildings and getting things done.
Right.
And I really embraced the architect exam. So I got halfway through my exams when I was at the firm. The recession hit. I was unemployed. I had to take a year and a half off in the middle. I got back to this. I started working at the city and I started to wrap up my exams. And by the time I was done with my exams, I was burned out. I was working full time. There was a lot going on. And I was in some ways really frustrated and a little bit disgusted with the profession of architecture, because when I started this process many years prior, I was led to believe architect exam's easy. What's the big deal? Everyone's just passing these exams in 6 months. You just show up and take the test, and what's the big deal? And it wasn't that at all.
Right.
It took me 4.5 years. I took a year and a half off in the middle. I spent 3 years of actively studying. I probably spent more than 2,000 hours studying to pass the architect exam. I failed 4 tests along the way. By the time I had my piece of paper and I could say I am now a licensed architect, I was the only person I knew that actually completed the process. I met hundreds of people along the way who said, I'm going to become a licensed architect. And they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to study. They had unrealistic expectations. And I just watched them crash and burn. And then they got really upset that they didn't pass a test. And they never came back to it ever again.
Wow.
So what's the point in actually going to architect school?
Architecture school.
No, I'm making. I'm giving an obvious question, but I kind of
jest. But more importantly, what's the point? Why get a license then?
There's really good answers to both of that. So the purpose of architecture school is really to teach future architects how to be creative, how to be problem solvers, how to think outside the box, how to create how to express ourselves. It's to learn the history, the theory, the fundamentals, the basic education of architecture. That's phase one.
Sure.
Phase one. After you graduate architecture school, the design and the history and theory, we got to let that go. We need to learn how to practice. In the next phase of licensing and practicing, it's about how to follow. What's the process? What's the systems? How do we follow the rules? Portion? Yeah, how do we deal with clients and budgets and schedules and put documents together and build, pull permits? And we need to learn the fundamentals and the history and the art and the poetry of what architecture school is before we start getting into making buildings.
Is that to motivate the understanding of what architecture really is?
I mean, we got to graduate. It's like we got to graduate high school before we go to college, and get all those other things.
That's fair.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
But right now there's this huge movement where like people are saying we gotta be using architecture school to be training practicing licensed architects, and I say no, we gotta learn the fundamentals and basics of what the poetry of architecture and like what design is and how do we express ourselves before we start making specifications and pulling permits and dealing with budgets and all that. It's it's a long process.
It is a long process.
Well, and I don't mean to kind of like be in jest about it, but I think it's really important to kind of understand the two different modes of it, because I love architecture. Like I think the buildings that we build actually shape the cultures that we live in, right? Yeah. And as a result, they actually just the lasting generations that then completely just shape generation after generation because of these beautiful structures we get to do with. So the poetry is obviously there. But the reality of actually like going to school, getting the degrees, and then actually applying that degree to a license is what I've noticed from what you're saying is completely separate.
Yes, it is. And then academia is not the place to learn how to practice architecture. It's the place to learn what architecture is. And it's after we graduate, we got the basic education done.
Right.
The next phase of the architect is to now go get a job at an office and start learning how to put buildings
That's
together.
Fascinating.
And how to study. Yeah, and how to study.
That's fascinating because I cut you off and I don't apologize for it.
I don't.
I think that a lot of people get caught in the fact that you're saying it backwards. In my small mind, I think everybody thinks that the schooling is where you should go, but I think you're 100% right. I think that they should learn all of the basic elements of what it is, the fundamental, this is why, this is who, this is the whole general process. But even outside of that, there are, I believe, too many variables even within the word architect.
Yeah.
There are too many directions that you go to go, let's all just try to crap out all of those pieces into chewable bites that you can consume so that you get 20% of 1% of your job later on, right? Like, to me, focus on 100% of the core basic and then let them go into the world once they've settled into this firm or that firm, because they're not all created equal, architecture firms. They're varying sizes, scales, scopes, interior, exterior, landscape. Like, the term architect is like saying engineer these days. It feels like. So that's where they get the education, right? The real education of understanding how to put the pieces together is within the firm.
How it's applied.
Is on the job.
There's the academic classroom education, which is architecture school, and then on the job experience. And the way our system is set up, I mean, you have to have the degree, you have to work under a licensed architect for 3,740 hours, and then you have to pass these 6 exams.
But he said on that is that after he got done with it, 4.5 years.
Oh, I was in college for 7.5 years. I got a 5-year degree. Yeah, 3 colleges. Yeah.
Okay.
And I got good grades the whole time.
But the application part of doing the testing and actually getting into that like license, you were the only one that went through that? That you knew
of a lot of people.
Go back to that comment.
Classmates, people in other offices, people I knew.
Unbelievable.
I watched hundreds of people tell me they were going to become a licensed architect. Have no idea, have unrealistic expectations, and very few people, no one. I was the only person I knew that actually got to that finish line.
So what year was that when you got to the finish line and then realizing?
It was the beginning of 2014. And after I was done, and as I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel of my wrapping up my exams, I said, I need something creative to work on. There's nothing creative about studying for the architect exam. It's all about following rules, not taking risks, and being safe. And so I'm a highly creative person, and I like to put stuff out there. So I said, I'm going to start a blog for the next generation of architects and start talking about this process of becoming a licensed architect from a human point of view. Because if this architect exam process was so easy and everyone's just, what's the big deal? Then where are the people not so far ahead of me, and how come they're not sharing realistic information?
Like where are those mentors? Where are those anchors that are actually reaching out and then pulling you to that destination?
I had no mentors in my career until I was licensed, and I pretty much navigated it and figured it out myself.
So this is fascinating.
This is the direction. This is what I wanted to actually get into and ask, because if you actually realize that all of a sudden you're the only one in the room that actually has these licenses, and then there was hundreds of people that you knew throughout your academic career that wanted to get inside but couldn't.
No one was getting there. Yeah, there was
just no one was getting inside the door. No one knew even to walk through or how to walk through. So this is what kind of brought you to the blog. This is what brought you to that.
I had blogged my bike trips.
Sure.
I had read everyone else's blogs, and so I had a little bit of blogging experience. So I said, I'm going to start, and I started following Mark LePage and NX Sears and all the other guy, Bob Borson. I was following them, and I said, I love what they do, but I want to take my spin on it and write for the next generation of architects. And so I started theyoungarchitect.com, and I just started talking about how I studied for my exams, the books I used, my attitude, my mindset, what worked, what didn't work. And I didn't realize it for a long time. But I was really kind of the first person to come along to say, hey, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I'm definitely not the dumbest. and if you want to become a licensed architect, you can definitely accomplish that goal, but you have to be persistent. You have to be persistent, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's at least 2,000 hours of work.
Wow.
And no one was saying that. Everyone was like talking about these exams like it was no big deal. And here I am. I'm the one that got there. And I started sharing that story, and it just resonated with a lot of people who had similar experiences, and youngarchitect.com just took off like a rocket.
Wow.
And the site ended up getting really big. At one point I wrote a book. I said I could write a book. So I put out a little black book called How to Pass the Architect Exam. And what started to happen was people would read that book, and they started to come to me and say, Mike, I need your help. I need a coach. I need a tutor. I need a mentor. I need someone to guide me through this process. Can I hire you? And I said, no, you can't. Because the problem with the architect exam is everything about the architect's education, how we go through, we're always in a group of people, we're working on the same project, there's a schedule and the deadlines. In the office, it's a collaboration. We're not isolated, we're not an island, we're not practicing in a vacuum. There's
the island of one, my man. The island of one.
Yeah. And so until we get to the architect exam, which is a self-guided process with no deadlines, and I said, I don't want to work with people one-on-one. And as more and more people kept asking, I said, you know what, let's treat the architect exam like a design studio. The same way we went through design studio and architecture school, I'll tell you guys what to go do.
Sure.
But let's come back together once a week and see what we can learn from each other.
Interesting.
And so I created this program in 2015 called the AIA Boot Camp that helps people get started with their exams. I say, I'm going to hold your hand and show you how I study for the architect exam. And it's not like a college class. I'm not the professor. I don't get up there and do all the work.
Right.
I said, you're going to do all the work, but I'll show you and I'll navigate you through this process. And so I launched this program back in September of 2015, and it's just blown up.
So just describe a little bit of that model for young architect. I would like to kind of hear that, because that's very interesting to me that you're saying, okay, no, I'm not going to be your mentor. No, I'm not going to be your coach. No, you can't hire me. But here's the model I want to do that enables your reach to be broader rather than that one-on-one coaching experience.
And it just gets back to our roots.
Okay.
Is learning collaboratively and working together as a group. That's how we've always been. That's how I went through architecture school. That's how we work in offices.
This is so interesting.
Because it just gets severed.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is you go through this communal course. This we're all in this community of getting this done.
Right.
And then that umbilical to everything is severed completely.
Now you're on an
and
island.
it's like, good luck.
And you got to pass all these tests.
Right.
Jeez.
And there's a shark.
Yeah.
Called
I like that.
Called the owner. You better do.
Well, it's just a shark of yourself. Even
Yeah,
sometimes
it's
it's
true.
like, I know he's here.
I know he's here. All
right, you just hear it. That's wildly impressive. So then you start creating these boot camps.
So I started the blog. I wrote the book. I create the boot camp. Boot camp takes off. We ended up we're creating study materials to help people pass these exams. We sell those online.
So ebook type of stuff or
videos. We have video packages. We
Okay.
sell it at a one-time fee at a very low, affordable rate. There's been
tell us what it's about. I'd love to hear it. I mean,
there's been a lot of controversy because I don't know. Some of the prep providers charge outrageous fees. They see this as an opportunity to price gouge all these unlicensed architects, and so I've gotten so frustrated watching this happen to my community.
I've watched you got frustrated, to tell you the truth. I've watched on Instagram just absolutely be like, "This is
True.
a fucking joke."
Yeah,
and like literally just.
And so out of frustration, and then I look at what I see what they're putting out and what they're charging, and I say, "Are you kidding me? I could do such a better job." So I just started doing a better job.
Good for you,
and
man.
Creating a better product, twice the content, twice the value, at a quarter of the price of what they're charging. And the goal has been to just help as many people as I can. I have so we got that. We have a Facebook group for the architect exam that has 6,500 people in it, and they're just going. It goes nonstop all day long. It's become a super powerful community for a lot of people. I'm traveling. I'm doing a lot of public speaking. I'm traveling around America, talking in different chapters.
So is that what fueled you? Like, obviously, set up the model, and then all of a sudden you realized, like, okay, going back to the cycling nomad days, like, I gotta do this now in a different format to actually now go to chapter by chapter by chapter, right? Is that what's been happening?
It was about 2014, 2015. I started to realize that this could actually be something. And I was really kind of overwhelmed by all the success that was happening around young architects. And I ended up hiring an amazing business coach to help me make sense of it all.
Yeah, I listened to the podcast on that one. That was a great podcast.
Yeah, I hired this amazing business coach to help me figure out how can I take my little passion project and turn it into a business.
Cool.
And we worked together, and it was around September of 2015. I walked away from my comfortable government job with excellent health benefits to pursue young architect full-time.
Sounds familiar.
We jumped into the same dark water.
Yeah.
Just because you had to. We did the similar
scary.
strategy of, you know what? Look, I'm so sick of talking about it and complaining about it. We just have to go do it.
Yeah.
That's what we did. And it's the same path for you. And then the same thing of good, steady jobs, making fair money with a safety net and a security blanket, like a whoopee, keeping you warm at night. And then you're just like, nope, jump in the dark water.
No, it is.
Hope it works.
Yeah, I know.
Hope it works.
But it worked.
No, it worked because you made it work.
Yeah.
Right? You put the work in, you did the time, you did the effort, and you knew that the strategy was already good. So you knew that. My question now, in a big philosophical, let's look at this as a big circle. Does any of this happen if you don't take that ride?
No, not at all.
Because what I've been listening to on this couch, which is the trust tree, is I hear this individual who had a pivotal shift in their everything when you took that first ride. For me, everything is just, I see it piecing back to that first ride of seeing everything from a different viewpoint, of understanding that to get to from here to there isn't one methodology. It's let me look at it from a different standpoint, but also just I want to take it and I want to put it out to the world to a certain degree. To me, it all stems back to that first ride of just doing something that nobody else really was doing and continuing to do it.
Absolutely.
Stating the obvious, is one of our biggest things, and I know that you are consistently just being absolute. Just this is what it is. Okay, it's not what everybody's saying that this is what it isn't like, but you just have a way of just bringing it out to a thing like that. It's just like there's just no BS about it. You know what I mean? And when I don't know, I've seen that if you guys, as I followed you on social media, and it's been super interesting to actually listen to and hear. But I do agree with Walker how it is that integration point of like, here's where it happened, because now you're traveling the country with your dog.
Yeah.
In a Sprinter van.
So really,
tell us about this.
Before you could jump into that, you're actually just like a vagabond, basically, right?
At this point,
that first ride, you just learned that you loved being in the world,
just doing it.
Well, I spent 10 years in the city of Portland, Oregon, becoming a licensed architect, hustling, building a resume and all this other stuff. And it was kind of like when I was getting ready, I was like, I used to cycle across America, I used to do all these things, but I haven't traveled in 10 years. I haven't been anywhere because I get calls from construction sites constantly.
Yeah.
So I needed to cut the cord and focus on this thing full time. And so, I've kind of gotten back to my roots now with Young Architect.
But scalability is interesting from an entrepreneur standpoint. So you're taking this and you're actually using the same thing, same methodology, but you've been able to scale it in a way with traveling and actually have these very intimate sessions with the AIA chapters. Talk about that a little bit. I'm really interested.
I'm glad you brought up the word scaling because it's something I think about constantly, because there's a lot of stuff I do that can scale and there's a lot of stuff I purposely do not scale.
Okay.
And I think it brings more value. So, I mean, I write all the blog content that scales, that goes out. We're doing more YouTube stuff, podcasts, social media, that scales and everything. I've got 2 presentations I give. I give a presentation about the architect exam, and I give a presentation about entrepreneurship and architecture. And people ask me all the time, they say, Mike, I wish you would put this on the internet so I could watch it. And I say, no, I won't do that, because I have a powerful message to share. And when I can look people in the eyes and give them this presentation, it connects and it hits and it lands 10 times harder than if we just watched it on our laptops.
No reason to devalue it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff I won't do. I won't let so I won't do a lot of webinars and stuff. I already do the boot camp online. Boot camp's one-on-one there's a lot of coaching. There's a lot of one-on-one attention from me when people sign up for boot camp. So I can only do X amount of people at a time.
Right.
And so there's a wait list to get on that program. And I could bring in other people and other coaches to do it, but it would get away from, I think it would dilute it some more. So
those people aren't you.
Yeah. And that's what people are signing up for, is they want to work with me and they want to go through the process. And all
so
that.
Unless there's somebody that comes into your organization with a similar backstory that can as passionately and as honestly portray that message, I don't know.
And I have alumni from my program who understand how all this stuff work, and we think very similar, and they help me with things along the way. Like on Sunday, they got a cover for me because I'm going to be on an airplane. But so there's, my goal with all of this is my mission is to help the next generation architects become the most successful generation architects.
Ask your mission for it.
And my goal is not to, push everyone into this boot camp. I want to help as many people as I can. So I got a free Facebook group. I got a book I wrote. I got all these cheap study materials. I got the boot camp program. I got the lectures.
So there's accessible material that you're bringing to that next generation that maybe necessarily can't afford it right now, or maybe necessarily don't want to take the jump into a boot camp or go to be on the wait list, but do want to still test and try and wet their palate a little bit.
And boot camp's not for everyone either.
Okay.
Sure.
And if it's not for you, I still want to help you get there. And
awesome.
My goal is to help everyone just move this thing in the right direction. And that's kind of been my business model, is to set up many, many different touch points at all different price points to just hit such a larger group along the way.
Interesting.
That's wildly powerful. How I really, truly, I believe that is wildly powerful. How has the architectural community in general responded to it?
Amazing.
Really?
So
fantastic.
I've been doing these tours. I don't like cold weather. I hate it.
So you're staying in the warm spots, and then you'll migrate when it's.
Can't
That's
handle
why
it.
you rode away from the cold ones.
And then I showed up. I left Portland. I was in New York I was in New York, and I ended up staying there longer. My best friend got a puppy, and I became a big part of that process with helping this puppy get up to speed. I love dogs, and I ended up spending the winter in Portland, but I was miserable the whole time, and I said no more. And so last summer I went and I bought a Mercedes Sprinter van. I said I'm gonna build this.
Oh, no way.
I'm gonna build this out.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to Florida. Me and my dog. We're gonna go to Florida. I don't know what we're gonna do when we get there, but we're gonna go to Florida.
When was this again?
Over the summertime.
Over the summertime. Yeah.
It was like
okay.
I bought it in. It hasn't even been a year yet.
Oh, wow.
So I bought this Mercedes Sprinter van. The first thing I did was I got it home and I cut a giant hole in the roof and I installed an exhaust vent so there's fresh air circulating through. And I insulated it. I put a bed in. We got a leather couch.
Yeah. So Walker, I've been watching him build this van on his Instagram stories for the past 9 months. Like it's been impressive. Like he was like, oh, we got insulation in, we got the LED lights in, and he's kind of stringing it up and stringing it around, and like this is my voyeur world that I get to watching you.
Well, I have a similar.
I love it.
There's
man.
a work associate that I had for a long time. His name's Colin, and he just was a young kid who had a great lady in his life, and they had worked very hard and saved a lot of money, and they said, you know what? This working all day, every day isn't for us. That's not what we do, right? So they bought a Sprinter van and they totally refurbished the inside, and they've been on the road now for, I'm going to say 2 years at least, just living life in the most beautiful places. And they follow it all on Instagram. It's at Van Daniel.
Oh, cool.
Van Daniel.
Instead of Damn Daniel. And it's Van Dam-esque. But it's got to be very freeing eventually.
It's fun. It's a never, what I need as another thing I needed in my life was I needed a reason to cut up 2x4s and to go to Home Depot and to like buy some power tools and to like feel like I'm building stuff. I was a big model builder in architecture school and I miss that. And so the van's given me that to like figure out how all these things go together, and it's like a never ending tinkering thing.
It's all DIY. It's all DIY.
Yeah. Oh, it totally is.
And and after all the time, I wouldn't even, after the time, the money, more of the time, I probably could have just bought some RV, but it wouldn't have given me something to do,
No, I don't think so at all.
It fulfilled a lot.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And so I've been driving this van around America. So I did actually last year. I had a minivan that I drove from New York down to Miami, over to New Orleans, up to Indianapolis, and back to New York. And I did about 30 lectures in all the cities, talking at all the different AIA chapters. And after that trip was over, I said, I need a bigger van, and we're going to go down to Florida. And so I built the van, and it was in November of 2018. We came down to Florida. My mom's got a house down there, so I parked it in my mom's driveway, but I still slept in the van every night. And I started going to the beach every day with my dog. And then I just did a big lap around the United States. So we started in Florida. We went out to Alabama, Atlanta, Nashville, did a loop around Texas all the way out to New Mexico, came back through Oklahoma, St. Louis.
So much exposure again.
Just keep every city. So
jeez, man.
I did like 35 lectures over the course of 6 weeks. And
how many people is that you've averaged on like 30 to 60?
I've probably had, I don't know, I can't do the math right now.
No, I'm just curious. Like
between 5 and 2,000.
Yeah, the smallest was probably like 4 or 5 people, but then I had lectures with like 50, 60.
How's the health of the AIA across the country?
Amazing.
Is it?
Unbelievable. It's beautiful. It's what I see happening across America is all these AIA chapters are concerned, and they're very passionate, and they're saying, Mike, we want this profession to succeed. We're aligned with your mission. What can we do? How can we help?
Wow, that's
and they bring me in, and I give my presentation. And a big part of what I talk about with the architect exam is not to just look at this as if it's some test or if it's some hurdle. And I say, let's focus on using these exams as an opportunity for personal and professional development to become more successful architects. Rather than just trying to pass a silly exam, we need this knowledge. We need this information to help us in the next chapter of our careers as licensed architects. So let's learn it, and let's learn it at its core, and let's get good at it. And if this is what we need to pass the architect exam, we're going to set our sights up here because we're going to be focusing on having successful careers. And that's the message I've been kind of carrying around America.
It's such a different perspective rather than the academic or license world in getting through, like, just getting through the license in order to be licensed, right?
Sure.
You're actually using the platform of becoming licensed is actually like trajectories in a completely different spot rather than just basically A plus B equals C.
Yeah. And that's kind of my story too, is I learned through this education of passing all of these exams, it changed my career and it helped me land that job at the city of Portland.
Yeah,
and it helped me kind of put all the pieces together. And by the time I was done with my license, I started using it. That was one of the things we didn't talk about, was I started moonlighting because the city was paying me to be a project manager. If I wanted to be a licensed architect on nights and weekends and work on some house projects, no conflict of interest
Outstanding.
whatsoever.
Well done, Portland.
So, yeah.
I think it's a phenomenal, because a lot of people get locked up into that.
Yeah.
That's great.
If I was with a firm, if I was working for a firm and I start working on these little residential remodels, it creates a big conflict. But because I was in a different situation, I teamed up with this builder and we did all these design build residential projects.
Awesome.
And
wow.
he would find these clients, I'd come in, do the design, permitting, and then we'd start building. And it was just super streamlined. We worked as a team.
Unbelievable.
That's so rare, man. That's
huge.
pretty rad. So, I mean, Edify Studios, our shtick, I guess, is to edify is to teach someone in a way that improves both mind and character. So that's the definition of it. And we go back into just focusing on architectural concepts and how we're actually realizing them into solutions. So as we dive into kind of the next segment of it, your origin story has so much. I don't know. We're going to get into a different segment of some of those architectural concepts. So as we look into the two things we wanted to talk about today was specifications, and I'll let Walker wrap on that a little bit. And then some of the cultural understanding of what we're seeing from a generational gap inside architecture and construction.
Yeah, jump into the gap first.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That's so. As you have seen through the different chapters in AIA, and one of my big things is I think because I came into this architectural construction world in that same time frame as 2007, 8, 9, and got into a place where I just stuck around. And there was an enormous amount of people that left to go get re-educated and go into another segment of business, or just say like, well, there is no way I can survive in this construction world just because the mortgage faucet shut off, and absolutely there was no water coming back into these fields, allowing it to basically flourish. So in our world, we look at it as like, I ended up actually just staying around because that's what it was. I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. That's what we've talked about. But I think what it's caused is there's maybe right there from
TBD.
From my perspective on the manufacturer rep side, then also even the subcontractor world, I'm looking at about 2.5 generations that are currently missing out of this market or out of this segment, this industry.
They're not there.
And everybody's asking about like, well, what's going to happen with the market? Is it going to plateau, or are we going to see this massive shift again, a reset? Are we in a bubble? Yada, yada, yada. I want to actually go back into a little bit more of a subculture of just calling it out as I see it. Michael, there is in about 6 to 7 years when the attrition happens within this market, and you see the 100% of the gray hair, blue hair people that are walking around, even this expo that we're going in now, those people will not be here.
Yeah.
Will not. So the demand of the value that we're starting with is this generation in like the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Like that generation is just like scraping by. Like who is actually here? We're like, there's 3 of us in this right now.
Are they out there?
Right. And I think there's more of a concern of like, is there none of a reset of like, is the market going to correct itself? Are we going to see this keep appreciating over and over again? But where are the people?
In some ways, that's a little hard for me to hear because I feel like I surround myself with all of these amazingly brilliant people who are of the next generation, who are working towards taking over and who are going to be the next generation of practicing architects. Yes. There's a huge, and I have somewhat of a jaded view. That's my community.
Sure.
Those are my people. But I think it's going to happen. Things are changing. Things are different.
For sure.
Right.
And, and that was one of the things that when I went through is I really questioned. I said, how come there's not mentorship? How come no one's talking about these exams from a realistic point of view?
Right.
And how come the architecture community is not trying to help create more licensed architects? One of the big shifts I see, happening with the next generation of architects, and is rather than everyone being so isolated and focusing on themselves and themselves getting ahead,
right.
I see the next generation architects actually mentoring each other horizontally and not always looking up from, not always looking up from the older generation to help figure out how to get these things done.
Not from a hierarchical standpoint.
Yeah. And so I see a lot of people collectively working together, really focusing on having better careers and stuff. And so, yeah, I think generationally changed, things are going to be awkward for a little while, but I don't think that we're going to be at a shortage of architects at all. And I need to applaud NCARB as well. They've made a lot of changes. When I failed an exam, I had to wait 6 months before I could retake it.
Oh my God.
6 months. I would work so hard to study for one of these tests. I wouldn't pass, and now I got to wait 6 months before I could retake it again. So it's like, what am I going to do?
Is that because they had some backlog where they had too many people booked?
They didn't have enough tests, so they can only offer. Okay, so they got rid of that. They turned it into 60 days, and they made a lot of changes to the licensing process that were very positive.
To enable it to go quicker.
Yeah, and they didn't make it easier, but they removed a couple of barriers that were blocking a lot of people. And
it's interesting. Well, and the reason why I ask about that is because, I mean, we tour not only the architects and see a lot of the general contractors and developer network, but since we're hooked up with a lot of the manufacturers that fulfill a lot of the products and the engineered solutions for the very specific things as we get into this industry, we see an enormous gap even in that side of the community of this whole industry of what actually brings those things to life is that those people aren't actually around. And it's interesting to have your view on it because I see something similar inside like the manufacturing and engineering and blue collar work world is that rather than seeing this hierarchical view of like corporation business happening, but actually see maybe this horizontal view. Just goes back to the same, like his first ride changed his life, dude.
That's
I'm just saying the view of it. I'm serious. That the perspective and the way you express it is just such a different thing. That's the first time I've actually heard that as far as how the people are going to be supporting this industry moving on because those mentors aren't there. You know what I mean? They aren't bringing that next generation up. It's that horizontal actually bringing it up together. It's that goes back to what immediately comes to mind is the raising tide raises all boats, or the
rising tide
raises all boats. All boats go up. Anyways, I screwed that one up big time.
Wade.
But anyway, but no, but I think it's a huge deal as it goes forward. I think we're in a different world as we come back into that segment of it. That's the reason why I wanted to ask you about it. But let's toss it over to you, Walker.
I thought about it while you were talking because I was bored with what you were saying. But I thought about it. I'm going to hold my question because you have to come back at some point. We have to sit down and do this again and go deeper into the world because this was an incredible experience that I literally want to dig deeper into. And I think that there's more to offer out there. So I'm going to table it.
No, I agree. That would be
100% table it.
Mike, this has been wonderful. I think is
wait. Can we do an edit right here real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to talk about with you guys
stop.
too. Yeah. So one of the things I've been promoting at this AIA conference pretty hard, and I've been working on this really hard for the past couple of months, is I'm having my own Young Architect Conference. I feel like with all the community and all the things I've been working on, I've had such a really supportive, good, amazing group of people just come around me who are aligned with what I want to do, with helping the next generation of architects succeed.
Cool.
And for years, I came up with this idea years ago, and I said, wouldn't it be cool if we had a Young Architect Conference that was like geared, really focused on the next generation of architects? And it was actually after the last AIA conference in New York. At the conference, I said, we're doing it. We're going to have a Young Architect Conference focused on the next generation of architects. I've attended dozens of architecture conferences.
Sure. As have we, yes.
Yeah, and it always feels like it's more about collecting your HSW continuing education units.
Yeah.
I love you guys, but I feel like sometimes it's more about the products and the windows. I love
Wait.
love Panda windows, by the way. They're the best you could get.
But you're not wrong. It's way too heavily influenced,
and it's
and overrun.
And I've even said in some ways it's more like a product rep conference disguised as an architecture conference.
That's very true.
That's very fair.
And so I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we had an architecture conference for the next generation? That was fun. That people wanted to attend. And so this summer we're going to do it in August. We're having a young architect conference in Portland, Oregon.
It's happening
for 3 days.
No way.
And we're going to have in the morning we're going to have keynote speakers from successful young people in the profession.
Okay.
In the afternoon we're going to have workshops all focused around the professional development of the next generation architects. We're going to be studying for their exams. We're going to be talking about life after, getting licensed. We'll be talking about practice. We'll be doing tours around the city of Portland.
Incredible.
At night we're going to have parties. And
that's what I like. That's
really,
awesome.
Really,
that's
the
awesome.
goal is to bring the community together.
Any highlights of projects you guys are going to do from like a touring standpoint or anything like that in Portland?
Yeah, there's a lot of construction going on. So
There's
we're going to be
so much.
visiting the firms. We got a historian that's going to be telling the history of Portland. Yeah. And
well, Portland is such an intimate setting too. I think from like that. That's the reason why I ask if you're actually going to be like going rather than just being a static conference. I'm curious if you're going to be just reaching out and actually going to those firms and going to.
Yeah, we're going to be visiting. We're going to be embracing the whole city, and
really, that's awesome.
And so this is going to be a conference for students, for emerging professionals, for recently licensed, and to really kind of come together and let's have a great conference about focusing on helping this profession succeed.
That's pretty impressive, man. That's way different. So is it there basically for the young tell us a little bit about how to get there, how to have the people access it, where they can actually register.
So all the details are at conference.youngarchitect.com. Conference.youngarchitect.com. We've got a scholarship as well for people who are like, I can't afford a conference ticket. If the ticket price is a barrier, just visit youngarchitect.com/scholarship. That will give you the scholarship. I've had a lot of product people and firms come to me and say, Mike, how do we sponsor your conference?
Sure.
And I've come up with a different idea on how that would work. As I say, I created a whole program. It's called the Corporate Champions or the Firm Champions. And I said, you know what? Buy some tickets to the conference and help me get more people, get more seats and chairs, and
so they can sponsor. They can really, really, honestly sponsor.
And that's how we're doing
to attend.
It. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's so smart, man.
Keep some bias out of it. Keep some
rather
concept
than just
of bias
throwing
out of
money
it.
at me
and then just
blindly
putting a banner back up.
Yeah,
just because they want to do it.
And then and we got this whole program set up. So the more tickets you buy, the more promotion we'll do at the the products.
But it's actually fueling attendance, which I like.
That's the goal.
And because I think that's actually what conferences should be, to tell you the truth, rather than saying let's have sponsors just to get the price down so we can actually
book the space we need.
So we can book the space we need. I mean that's I don't know, it's just obvious again, Mike. It's super obvious. That's great. That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, so for the sponsors, it's youngarchitect.com/corporate. For the firms, it's youngarchitect.com/firms. And all the conference details are at conference.youngarchitect.com. And so I'm just trying to get the word out about this. Is the first time we're doing it. We're going to keep the goal is to have this be an annual event that people are excited to attend.
Absolutely.
So this is the first one. So I've been hustling really hard just trying to get the word out.
Well, we want to hustle for you, man.
Yeah, we'll do everything we can to bring awareness, because that is wildly important to us. That is wildly important. I can't thank you enough for coming. We're going to get a little bit of juice out of you still.
Yeah.
We're going to jump into the Edify top 2.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to wind this mug down and just hit us with the 2 things that are you're really into right now.
I really like Instagram stories.
Okay.
All day long it goes.
Yeah.
And the reason I like it doesn't stick around forever.
Yeah.
Just 24-hour lifespan. And so in some ways I've kind of fallen into this trap of micro-blogging my entire day of what's happening. And I hate to say it, sometimes I post like 20 or 30 stories in a day, but
no.
Wow, I don't know anybody like that.
Yeah.
At all.
So
I love it. I know. I totally agree with you.
And from a business social media point of view, it's a terrible idea, because I've spent so much time working on this social media post that's only around for 24 hours when it could be growing my brand and building a thing. But
I don't know. I think it's all about attention.
The cost is wildly affordable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's fun. I'm having fun with it. So
that's exactly right.
I don't have to be so serious.
That's exactly right. What? Give us one more.
YouTube Premium.
YouTube Premium.
I just got into it.
Game changer.
Just got into it
Really?
this
Game
week.
changer.
So this is the first time I'm hearing about it. So tell me about it.
I've been on YouTube, I think, from the very beginning. And okay, so it turns. So first off, it turns off the commercials. No more commercials. YouTube commercials. It works amazing on your phone. Suddenly, YouTube doesn't need to buffer all the time, and it
Really?
just,
It's like they governed everybody else's content stream,
yeah.
and now
You're a priority.
They've opened up the throttle for you.
You're a priority on the YouTube. So watching videos is no longer a hassle, and you can. And what I do a lot of times is I start. It's like an hour. It's like, I don't know. I would watch like Joe Rogan. I'd start the video. I turn my phone off, stick it in my pocket, and I could still listen. Where you can't do that when you don't have the premium.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's only what, $15 a month.
Whatever it is, it's worth.
Yeah.
It's worth the. I don't have to see 20 to 30 seconds of Geico every 8 minutes or whatever.
I'll
Just-
pay not to see
just
advertising.
just from the value of it. Like, I get it. That's how they make money. I'll pay you so that we can get rid of that. So
That's pretty impressive,
it's-
though.
It's
Interesting.
It's even got a slightly different look.
Yeah.
I've noticed it's a little darker. It's just a little more pronounced. That's a good call.
And so that's allowed me to connect with a lot of content creators in a lot of different realms. I don't watch TV, I don't watch movies, but I spend a lot of time on YouTube
Sure.
looking at things.
Interesting.
YouTube is wildly undervalued by so many people. Like, even when you tell somebody who's like, we're thinking about putting an educational series on YouTube, they're like, that's cute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where do you learn 90% of what you do?
I had to fix my washer the other day, and
How'd you do it?
I had to actually. It was like, how do I change this filter? YouTube.
Yeah.
Thanks to six guys who've taken the time to
Yeah.
record them doing it.
I never knew where my
We
washer
talked to somebody the other day who was like,
Washer
that's
filter was.
that's a nonsense. Well, how do you learn your stuff? What do you mean? Have you had to do anything lately, like change the battery in your lawnmower? He goes, actually, I did just change the blade on my lawnmower. How'd you figure it out?
Oh,
YouTube.
Yeah, I just Googled it and just YouTube it.
Wild. Interesting.
Cool, man. So what about you? Edify top 2 for you, my man.
My
Walker,
Edify top
what do you
2,
got?
it's been just a wild couple of weeks, but I want to say that people not screaming about Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Just because it's a great show, everything
That
is
it's
good.
over?
Well, just that people were angry or people were it became this thing at the end where everybody was just like opinioned, and I'm just like, I don't know. Is it? To me, it was a great show that ended how it should have ended, but just to not see it flooded everywhere, I'm kind of okay with.
Good for you.
Like, everybody's been mad, so mad about it.
Are they going to have a spin-off show? Arya?
I think
He tried to predict it. He
I
actually
did.
said,
I said it would have been Arya and the Hound, but the Hound died. But that's fine.
"Oh, spoiler alert."
I'll bleep that out. I'll put some bleeps in that editing. Also, they all die eventually.
Eventually.
And then I guess my second thing would be that we had a neighbor who was moving, and she didn't want to move this thing that she's had for her kids, and it's this pretty heavy duty electric motorcycle.
Okay.
Oh.
And I have two boys and a long 100-yard driveway of just gravel. And so she's like, "Hey, do you want this?" And I'm like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" So I went and picked it up, and it was super beefy, and I rode it, so
Awesome.
you can take a look. But just to see the kids, I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old boy, and just to see them zoom and have that freedom that they've never. I mean, a bike is one thing, but this is just to see that freedom on their faces is
Pretty
just
awesome.
It's been overwhelming. So super good on that. Those are my two.
Cool.
So Edify top 2 for me, I'll stay kind of in the family mode. So my 13, almost 14-year-old boy is actually getting into guitar lessons. So and his guitar teacher is trying to teach him the riffs and stuff like that, just kind of getting him into it beyond chords, and he's starting to get into some so what he's calling old school music, right? This is crazy.
Which
right?
I have to believe is what, like
Nickelback?
Nickelback?
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So his YouTube playlist and his Amazon Music playlists are changing now. So now it's like
Under
he's
the
like
bridge downtown.
exactly. So he's starting to listen to the same stuff that I listen to, but it's also getting me back into guitar. So I learned guitar when I was about that same age, and now we're going to guitar stores. We're actually looking into it. So understanding what a Les Paul is, and telling me what Gibson is, all the different brands and going through it, and it's just been actually pretty fun to get in. So top 2 is reintroducing myself
That's cool.
through music, through my boy.
That's great.
Super awesome. And then I got to dive back into coffee.
Oh.
Okay, I know you're bored about this shit. So at the end of the day, so I roast coffee on the weekends. I kind of got into the whole bulletproof coffee thing and did all that stuff. But then I realized through it, I would rather actually roast my own and have it super fresh, and just barely switched my roasting technique up based upon the origin of the bean. So as a result, you actually have highland and lowland coffee depending on where it's grown. And I've been kind of messing inside the Ethiopian ones, the high elevation, and then going into and kind of been going between Ethiopian beans and Guatemala beans. But this Ethiopian bean that I did, I switched my method up by reducing a lot of the temperature and then extending the roast back out. And it brought so much more flavor back into it. I'll have to send you some, man.
Yeah.
Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah.
Yes?
Oh.
Hey,
I used to brew beer, which I think is
You did?
kind of like
It's
Oh, yeah.
very
super nerd.
It's super
nerdy.
Yeah.
It's so much more than people give it credit for.
Oh, yeah.
Like listening to him drone on and on. But at the same time, it's wildly cool to see somebody understand the benefits
Oh, yeah.
of taking that bean and doing it to its fullest. When you can't just take hops and boil them in water and add some barley and malt and hope it works, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a very specific how long, which hop, how am I trying to get the citrus out of this? Am I trying, right?
Yeah, and what I like too is it's giving them something to do.
Oh,
and to figure out
dude.
and like
So just like your DIY in the van world, like you can actually zero in on how this is going to work, and you can put the wood decking in or whatever. For me, like to go into that and be like, okay, I got to study up on the origin of this bean. Where was it from? What is the farm? Is it actually, how does it work? And then, okay, great. 3,500 feet. I understand what it's going to be from a temperature standpoint. So I have to hold it at that temperature for at least 7.5 minutes in order to bring it back down again. It's stuff like that I'm just kind of going back into. It allows me to kind of have that therapeutic moment so anyway, it's been super great. So
Awesome.
Anyway, Mike, thank you so much for joining us on the Edify Studios podcast. This has been very, very fun for us. Our inaugural interview.
First guest,
stealing all your time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you going through all of the whole story
journey,
for us.
The whole journey. What a wild journey, and just to see that you've taken it to a standpoint of being able to position yourself to help so many people who don't have any idea of how to get it done because there isn't something set to do it. So, just to not only be doing it for yourself, but to be adding so much value to something that you really are passionate about already. So,
deal. Well,
huge.
Give us Young Architect all your stuff, how to get a hold of this one more time, and then we'll just kind of tie it off from there, my man.
Visit youngarchitect.com.
Okay.
Youngarchitect.com. Find me on LinkedIn, Michael Riscica, Riscica. Instagram, Young Architects, PDX. And it's all there.
It's pretty simple.
Conference.youngarchitect.com. Everything points back to Young Architect.
We'll push some more information on that as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you. Appreciate it for working it out today. Join us on the Edify Studios podcast next time. We're going to bring you some more podcast interviews here shortly here at AIA 2019. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we're out. See you guys. Take care.
Adios, amigo.
Thanks for listening to the Edify Studios podcast with hosts Brad Glauser and Brad Walker. To learn more about Edify Studios, visit www.edify-studios.com. That's www.edify-studios.com.